Hey everyone, welcome to After the Buzzer. Today on this episode, we are going to be talking about ways that we think we can make the fantasy sports landscape better for everyone. On the most recent episode of Game Tape Rewind, we talked about our experiences playing with fantasy sports, how that has changed over the last decade or so, and some of our favorite and least favorite memories involved. And Eric, I'm going to ask you first, when you think about fantasy sports and in your experience, what do you think needs to happen to make fantasy a better experience for everyone?
Yeah, we could probably write a several book series on this, but I think for me, and maybe this is just a life philosophy for me too, and maybe working in government and things of that nature, is that it's people driven. So if you don't have the right ingredients at the start to make that recipe right, like I just think that doesn't matter the other parts of it. So it's so people driven that if you have a work league and you understand at the beginning that that may not be a super competitive situation, it's just people who kind of want to have something on the side. That's fine, and you understand what you're going in. But for people maybe like you and I as well who do enjoy those competitive leagues, is that the recruitment process and kind of the vetting of players, and is this someone you can trust to play all the way through? And you and I have both been commissioners of leagues before, and we understand that those are all things you have to take into account, which is unfortunate. But that's just like being a manager in any kind of situation in work and life is understanding the roster of people you're dealing with. So for me, it would be try to encourage over time, even if you have to, cutting ties necessarily with people who aren't going to be as competitive. If that's the standard of your league, and you have 10 out of 12 people who are pretty competitive, but maybe two who dwindle here or there, don't have much success usually, or you may lose them for a week or so, kind of go missing, MIA.
Yeah.
You have to make those tough choices. So for me, it's really people driven. There's a lot of benefits, as we've stated in the podcast, about keeping close to people and things like that. But I think the bond gets stronger when the competition, if that's what you want out of fantasy, is there. But that takes everybody being fully involved 100%.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because you need to know what you're getting yourself into and that everybody involved is also on the same page.
Yeah.
I'm in leagues where it is competitive. I'm in leagues where it's mostly for fun. And as long as everybody knows that, then you're going to have a fun experience and you're going to get out of what you put into it. Um, I have a couple. They're um, pretty similar to just making sure that things are fun for everyone. And the first one is be open to different and changing rule settings and scoring settings. Fantasy sports and sports in general have evolved so much that you need to shake things up once in a while to keep it interesting. So for fantasy football in particular, a couple leagues that I'm in have changed the way that we count who wins and who makes the playoffs. So in one league, the final playoff seed goes to the team with the most points scored over the entire season, so that you really are rewarding the people who have had the best seasons. That you kind of take luck out of the equation a little bit because so much of fantasy is luck. In another, we do every week. You play somebody on your own matchup, but you also play the rest of the league, and the top six scorers get a win in addition to their own matchup. So it's similar. There are different things you can do with roster setup and construction and the way scoring works. And I think just experiment with some of those things because you might find that breaking from the traditional mold yields a more fun experience and everybody feels like their efforts are actually being rewarded in different scoring scenarios and rule setups. So that's one way that I and the leagues that I have done and I'm in have been able to change to keep things interesting. The other is just in general, try to do things in person as much as possible. Obviously, this year that hasn't really been possible for a lot of reasons, but one thing that I really enjoy is that my college fantasy football league, up until the last couple of years, every Labor Day weekend, we would get together for a long weekend down either by the Delaware beaches or up in the Poconos or somewhere else similar, where we just hang out for the weekend. And the draft is the nominal reason why we're there, but really it's just to reconnect, hang out, get together. And plus, in-person drafts are always more entertaining because there's a lot more opportunity for trash talk and second guessing and booing and all that fun stuff. And um, if you have a league like ours where the last place typically has the last place finisher from the previous year typically has a punishment involved, then you can get them to play the national anthem, or you can get them to do something where that you've already previously agreed upon, and it just makes it a little bit more personal, and you get more memories out of it, which I think is ultimately the entire point of playing fantasy in the first place. So those would be mine. I think I appreciate yours as well, just to make things a little bit more fun and equal for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for us, fantasy is bringing people together. It is the way, it is the ultimate connector for sports fans. No matter if you move away from friends or you have lost contact since maybe high school or college, it is the glue for a lot of reasons. And for both of our ways, keeping things interesting, just like any relationship, you want to keep things spicy per se. You mix things up, and then at the same time having equal trust. This is kind of like a more of like
This
a
is a life
relation.
podcast.
Yeah, this is a
Yeah.
life podcast all of a sudden, but you got to have some trust and understand, hey, if you're going to commit to this, you need to commit, because otherwise it changes the scope of everything. So I'd like to think we give out some good pieces of advice, and just little gift for the holidays that to you out there, the listeners.
Yeah, hopefully you can take something from this. If not, hopefully you appreciated us sharing our ideas. Be sure to check out the full episode of Game Tape Rewind. It should be released by the time this goes live, where we talk about all sorts of things related to fantasy sports. Check us out. Email us if you have any ideas or comments, gametaperewind@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Game Tape Rewind. If you're watching this, then you already know we're on Instagram at Game Tape Rewind. We hope you have a happy holiday season, and good luck to anybody playing in fantasy football playoffs and getting started with fantasy basketball. Happy holidays again, and we'll talk to you next time.